I'm not here to make friends. That's what I remind myself each time I step into the elevator. I'm here for one thing only, to climb the corporate ladder. My office was my battlefield, and I was a soldier determined to win. I wasn't interested in office gossip or friendly banter. My focus was on my work, my next promotion, and getting ahead. It was no secret that I wasn't the most popular person in the office, but I didn't care. I was focused on my goals, and I wasn't going to let anyone stand in my way. When the merger happened, I knew things would change. What I didn't expect was sharing my office space with a man like Ethan. Tall, with a strong build, he had the kind of presence that made everyone around him feel at ease. His dark hair was always perfectly styled. His blue eyes sparkled with mischief, and he had a smile that seemed to make everyone in the office swoon. His voice was smooth, charming, and he knew exactly how to use it to get what he wanted. Ethan was the kind of guy who could light up a room just by walking into it. He was friendly, funny, and always knew the right thing to say. He flirted shamelessly with the women in the office, and they loved every second of it. I would watch, my jaw clenching, as he would lean in close to whisper something in their ears, making them giggle and blush. He would compliment their outfits, remember small details about their lives, and offer to help them with their work. He was always touching them in subtle ways, a hand on the shoulder, a brush of fingers against their arm. It made my blood boil. How could someone like him be so careless and still get ahead? He was a distraction, a playboy, and yet he was also one of the most productive and resourceful members of the team. No matter how much time he spent flirting, his work never suffered. He was always on top of things, always prepared, always impressing the higher-ups. It infuriated me. Our rivalry began the day we started working together. I couldn't stand his casual approach to work, and he couldn't understand why I was so serious all the time. We were both ambitious, but our methods were entirely different. I was laser focused, willing to do whatever it took to succeed, while he seemed to glide through life effortlessly. It drove me crazy. Outside of work, I had no time for romance. My life was my job, and any free time I had was spent releasing stress in the only way I knew how, by going to nightclubs and losing myself in the music, the alcohol, and the touch of a stranger. There was one night in particular that stands out. I met a man at the bar, tall and muscular, with a rough edge to him that I found strangely appealing. We didn't talk much. It wasn't about getting to know each other. It was about forgetting everything for a few hours. He took me back to his place, a dingy one-room apartment that smelled of stale beer and cigarettes. The bed was unmade, clothes strewn everywhere, but I didn't care. The moment we were inside, he pushed me against the wall and kissed me hard, his hands rough on my body. I responded with equal intensity, tearing at his clothes, desperate to feel something, anything that wasn't the emptiness I carried inside. We fell onto the bed, our bodies colliding in a frenzy of passion. His kisses were aggressive, his touch demanding, and I matched his energy with the fervor I didn't know I had. We didn't hold back. It was raw, primal, a battle of wills where neither of us was willing to surrender. By the time it was over, I was breathless, my body aching, but my mind peacefully numb. For a few moments, the weight of my ambitions, the constant pressure to succeed, melted away. But the relief was always temporary. The next morning, I would wake up feeling even more empty, and the cycle would begin again. Back at the office, the rivalry between Ethan and me took a serious turn when a new managerial position was announced. It was the opportunity I had been waiting for, the chance to finally prove myself and take the next step up the ladder. But Ethan was just as qualified as I was. if not more so. I knew he would be my biggest competition, and I was prepared to do whatever it took to win. I started working even longer hours, pouring all my energy into preparing for the interview. I was running on coffee and adrenaline, barely taking care of myself. I skipped meals, stayed late into the night, and pushed my body to its limits. I couldn't afford to lose. One evening, after everyone else had left, I was working on a report when the exhaustion finally caught up to me. I stood up to stretch, and the next thing I knew, the room was spinning. Before I could catch myself, I felt strong arms around me, holding me up. It was Ethan. He looked down at me with concern in his eyes, his arms steady and sure as he held me. For a moment, I was too stunned to move. I could feel his chest, solid and warm, pressed against me, and my heart started to race. This was the closest we had ever been, and it felt different. There was something comforting about his strength, something that made me want to lean into him, to let go of the constant tension I carried. But then I remembered who I was, who he was, and I pulled away, embarrassed by my weakness. I mumbled a quick thank you and rushed out of the room, my cheeks burning with shame. I couldn't believe I had let myself be vulnerable in front of him, of all people. The next day, Ethan surprised me by bringing lunch to my desk. He set the container down without a word, just a small smile playing on his lips before he walked away. I stared at the food, unsure of what to make of it. Was this another one of his games? Was he trying to make me look weak, or was he genuinely concerned? I couldn't afford to trust him, not with so much at stake. But as the days went on, Ethan's kindness continued. He would bring me coffee in the mornings, offer to help with tasks that weren't even his responsibility, and check on me when he thought I was working too hard. It threw me off balance. I wasn't used to anyone caring about me, especially not someone like him. Despite my best effort to keep my guard up, I started to feel something for Ethan. I hated myself for it, but there was no denying the attraction that was growing between us. I found myself looking forward to our interactions, craving the moments when he would smile at me or say something to make me laugh. I was falling for him, and it terrified me. When the promotion was finally announced, I was thrilled to hear that I had gotten the job. It was everything that I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed for. But there was also part of me that was sad. I had expected Ethan to be upset, to see him as my rival until the end. Instead, he was genuinely happy for me. He congratulated me with that same smile, and then he suggested we celebrate my success together. I agreed, and that night, he picked me up on his motorcycle. It was exhilarating, the wind whipping through my hair as we sped through the city. We ended up at a small bar, where we drank and talked and laughed like we had known each other for years. The tension between us was electric, and when he kissed me, it was like a spark igniting a fire inside me. Ethan rode me home, and as we stood outside my door, I knew I should stop him. I knew I should go inside alone and keep things professional. But I couldn't. I wanted him, needed him, in a way I hadn't allowed myself to need anyone in a long time. He followed me inside without a word, and the moment the door closed, he grabbed me, his lips crashing against mine. I kissed him back just as fiercely, my hands tearing at his clothes, desperate to feel his skin against mine. We stumbled into my bedroom, our movements frantic, driven by the intensity of our desire. I pushed him onto the bed and climbed on top of him, taking control. His hands gripped my hips, guiding me as I moved against him, our bodies in perfect sync. The world outside faded away, and all that mattered was the feeling of him inside me, the way he made me forget everything else. We moved together with a raw animalistic intensity, our breaths ragged and our bodies slick with sweat. It was nothing like the encounters I had before. This was real, passionate, and it made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. I could feel every inch of him, every shiver of pleasure that coursed through me, and it was overwhelming. As we climaxed together, I felt a connection between us that went beyond just physical. It scared me, this vulnerability, this possibility of something more. When it was over, we lay there in the dark, our breath slowing, our bodies still entwined. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I couldn't control, something I couldn't just push aside. I didn't know if I should follow my heart and let myself love him, or if I should continue to focus on my career, keeping my emotions locked away where they couldn't hurt me. The decision loomed over me, a choice that could change everything. But as I lay there in Ethan's arms, I realized that maybe, just maybe, it was time to let someone in.